Australia's new Treasury Secretary has delivered some fighting words to critics of the budget. In his first public appearance, Martin Parkinson took aim at those complaining about a budget which isn't tough enough, an economy overly reliant on China and a high Australian dollar. Here's Philip Lasker.
Martin Parkinson was following the post-budget tradition of defending the document and attacking those in the media and markets who analyse it.
Because while Treasury's estimates have been quoted widely, the caveats on their lack of precision have not.
In other words, all the critiques about future deficits and surpluses failed to include the difficulties in predicting many of its ingredients, like Australia's trade performance, which could be affected by a number of different and plausible assumptions, and tax revenue, which didn't necessarily have a direct relationship to economic performance.
Usually the growth of the economy, particularly nominal GDP, is a really good guide to how revenue grows. This time around, the strength of the economy is not being fully reflected in revenue growth. So I think it was just sort of laying the case that it's pretty difficult to forecast these things.
But the concerns went beyond our borders to the risks posed by a failure to address Europe and America's debt problems and Asia's inflation, particularly China, which points to a volatile Chinese economy triggered by a failure to fully address the issues.
So while we have a downside risk to our forecast for more rapid global supply responses for our key commodity exports, we also face the possibility of policy missteps beyond our influence.
But he dismissed concerns about Australia's over-reliance on China.
I didn't see in the 50s and 60s and 70s people saying, gosh, 40% of our exports, twice what now goes to China, is going to the UK, and perhaps we better structure our budget in case something happens to the UK. The world is as the world is. What we've got is 25 years of experience of policy responding to shocks as they come along.
And the fact is, whether we like it or not, we're going to be linked to China either directly or indirectly, but it's better to have a comparative advantage in resources that we can then leverage off of.
And there was a defence of what he saw as the toughest budget and the fastest surplus timetable possible.
It's unclear whether an ex-ante faster consolidation would actually result in a consolidation of the same magnitude, because actual growth would have been weaker in 10-11 than the 2.25% now in prospect.
Also in prospect was an Australian dollar which will move in line with the terms of trade.
It's therefore expected to also remain persistently high for quite some time.
It is more likely to be a permanent than a temporary phenomenon.
The question then is, do they do anything in terms of policy, particularly industry policy, to try and smooth the adjustment process for those industries that are more affected by the higher dollar?
It doesn't look like it's forthcoming.
The businesses and people who succeed are those who will embrace and adapt to these changing circumstances.
Survival of the fittest is the message from Canberra.